Over the past few months, I have been on a personal quest to find the best value on the new car market. A vehicle that's fun to drive, fun to own, also a vehicle that's not underpowered, but also a car or crossover that gives you the interior features that you demand in 2024. Late last year, I had checked out the Honda Civic Sport, which I felt for a sedan at $25,000 to $26,000 was giving you quite a bit, mostly because of the chassis and platform. But there is one variant that I feel is the best car in the Honda lineup, and that is the Civic Hatchback. Today, I'm going to be checking out the 2024 Civic Hatchback EXL, which is a trim still priced below $30,000. It gives you a lot of interior features, but also you get the 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine under the hood. And in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the hatchback, take a look at the exterior, the interior, take it out for a test drive, and also see why, if you're looking at buying an affordable and practical car at around $30,000, then maybe taking a look at the Civic Hatchback might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I'd like to thank Atamian Honda in Tewksbury, Massachusetts for allowing me to this review. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Honda inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. The Honda Civic has been around for 11 generations, none more important than where we are today in 2024, as compact cars aren't necessarily the first choice for a growing number of consumers. Yet, Honda has remained as a formidable option in the sub-$30,000 market. With competitors dwindling, especially for hatchbacks, the Civic brings practicality in the form of mature styling and upscale refinement, in ways that many rivals have failed to match and replicate. As buyers' demands continue to shift this segment towards technology and luxurious qualities, Honda has happily obliged with a car that's resonated with consumers of all ages. Starting off with pricing, the model we have today is the EXL, coming in at just over $28,500, and it's this trim where there's an inflection point regarding mechanical components and interior features that drastically improves the overall value proposition of this hatchback. When the 11th generation made its debut, many were quick to point out Honda's shift towards focusing on a younger consumer demographic. However, even with the minimalist design and keen focus on crafting a vehicle that appeals to a tech-oriented buyer, the Civic has become the compact car America needs in a time when enticing and appealing vehicles that are also affordable are few and far between. From generation to generation, the Civic has worn different styles, often bearing no resemblance to its predecessor, as Honda has historically taken a non-linear approach to the road presence, keeping their compact car always looking refreshed and futuristic to a certain degree. For 2024, full LED headlights and a honeycomb mesh grille doubled down on the Civic's sporty tendencies, and better yet, it has its own unique design that isn't similar to the Accord or even the HR-V it shares platforms with. Reversing course with a less assuming front fascia compared to the 10th generation, Honda still managed to craft a sedan and hatchback that garners attention while not deviating from this car's core values. Moving over to the side profile, complementing the demeanor of this hatchback and keeping drivers comfortable on longer drives, the 17-inch alloy wheels may be more suitable than the 18s found on the Sport and Sport Touring. While the difference isn't drastic, the Civic confidently glides over imperfections in the road, and most of this can be attributed to the chassis and platform, which brings a refinement and quality that you'd expect in far more expensive vehicles. You'll have body color folding side mirrors, and one key difference compared to the Sport trim is that you will receive blind spot detection for added safety. Then as we make our way around to the back, Honda continues to mask the final third of their hatchback, where it appears more like a Sportback rather than a traditional hot hatch. With the sloping roofline and conjoined taillight design that runs the length of the liftgate, the Civic looks sporty and dynamic, even in EXL form. Much like the front fascia, there's something classy about this compact despite its place in the market as being an economical car. And while Honda has embraced smoother body lines for their smallest offering in the lineup, it does appear cutting edge and fun when glancing at the Civic for the first time. Under the hood, the EXL is powered by a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, producing 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a CVT. Shoppers who are on the fence about whether they should choose the Sport with the 2-liter rather than spending a little extra for the EXL or Sport Touring may find the 1.5 to be more pleasant and capable of meeting their demands in regards to straight-line speed, but also in regards to overall refinement. While the CVT won't truly mimic the gear shifts of a traditional automatic, because you have the stronger power plant, droning and experiencing the typical rubber band effect with this transmission will be greatly reduced. As always, the Civic Hatchback will only come available with front-wheel drive, and when it pertains to fuel economy, you're looking at right around 30 miles per gallon in the city and 38 miles per gallon on the highway to be a great economical choice in this market. Stepping inside, the EXL will offer a plethora of standard equipment that may surprise you in a $30,000 hatchback. You're greeted by heated leather trimmed seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having power adjustability for added convenience. While our experience with the Sport trim and the cloth upholstery was very positive, the softer and plush materials found in the EXL is where splurging on your next daily driver is worth the investment. In front of you, there'll be a half analog, half digital gauge cluster, where you can scroll through a variety of information, such as vehicle settings, fuel economy, and the tire pressure monitoring system. It's also here where your traffic sign recognition will be displayed, and that will be found next to the digital speedometer. As we take a glance over to the infotainment system, the EXL will receive the same user interface as the LX and Sport, and only with the Sport Touring will you get the larger and modernized 9-inch touchscreen. You'll have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, and with this head unit being simplified, there won't be any learning curves when hopping into the Civic for the first time. There'll be physical buttons mounted below that will get you to the desired menus quickly and efficiently, and you'll have physical dials for the volume and tuning. Best of all, and this has been a hot topic for new car buyers, all your climate controls will be found below, including the 3-level heated seats, front and rear defrosters, and AC, which some rivals have moved all these functions to the infotainment system to minimize button clutter. As always, you'll have a multi-angle rear backup camera with trajectory to help you park your Civic. Then as we make our way towards the center console, you'll find a USB input and 12-volt outlet, along with a cubby for a smartphone or loose change. On the Sport Touring, a wireless phone charging pad will come standard, matching the wireless Apple CarPlay. Next to the gear shifter, the buttons for Eco Mode and the Auto Start Stop function will be placed within arm's reach, and it's also here where you'll find the electric parking brake. For the center storage compartment, there'll be enough room for smaller items, and rounding out the front seating area, above will be a power moonroof, which will let in some natural light to the interior. Now taking a look at the second row seating area, there is one compromise going with the hatchback over the sedan, and that is interior space for the second row. You're looking at right around 36 inches of legroom, which would be on par with a lot of smaller cars in this market. However, compared to the sedan's at 37.4. Now, is that inch-and-a-half difference great? Is it going to be noticeable? Not necessarily, but I do notice that sitting in the second row is a bit more cramped than what I experienced in the sedan about 4 to 5 months ago. However, with the seat adjusted all the way back and a bit of on a recline, I still have a good amount of legroom here. Also, I noticed too with the hatchback is that the seat positioning is a bit different, where it's a bit lower to the ground to maximize that headroom, because of course with this being a hatchback you have that sloping roof line, and I do think that if you have taller passengers in the back of this car, they will be hitting their head on that headliner. But for average-sized adults, everyone should still be pretty comfortable. Now, what I really like about the Civic hatchback, especially with the EXL, is that These seats do provide a good amount of support and bolstering for the second row, not typically seen for a car in this market. Also knowing too is that if you only have 2 passengers in the back, there's going to be plenty of shoulder room as well. But let's see if you can fit a third person in the center. Now, moving on to that center seat, you are going to have some great placements for your feet. The center hump is pretty aggressive, so that will take away from legroom and maybe even shoulder room as well. But again, one thing I do like about this car is that there's still enough interior space where I think you could squeeze in a smaller adult or a smaller child. Obviously, with the Honda Accord and HR-V, it's going to be a bit more family friendly, so I would suggest going in that direction if you do have more than 2 people sitting in the back all the time. But also, for a vehicle as your daily driver or your first ever brand new car and you don't have a family, you don't have people sitting in the back at all times, I would totally overlook that, because what you have here with the Honda Civic in general and just from an overall perspective, you're getting a lot of value here, especially for a hatchback under $30,000. Then on the driver's side, the seat is adjusted to someone of my height, around 5'5", and I have plenty of legroom here where I can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the driving experience. And once again, it comes back to the upholstery for the EXL, very comfortable and plush. Now, no surprise here, you do not have air vents mounted on the center console, nor do we have a USB-C or USB input. However, we do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Then making our way around to the back, this is where going with the hatchback is going to make a lot more sense. Even though you're not going to receive a power liftgate, you are going to receive an eye-opening 24.5 cubic feet of room. To put all of that into perspective, that's about 10 cubic feet more than the Civic sedan, that's about 6 cubic feet better than the Mazda 3 hatchback, and 4 cubic feet better than the Subaru Impreza and Subaru Crosstrek. If you're somebody who does not want to buy a crossover, the Civic hatchback is your best candidate. Also nothing too, you might be looking at the Honda HR-V. However, with the EXL, you get the 1.5. And if you're somebody who wants that better powertrain, that's where going with the Civic is going to be a better option at the end of the day. Because this cargo area is wide and also deep, you can fit easily 9-10 bags of luggage back here. I don't need to tell you that I was able to fit all my camera gear, because I could have stored groceries, I could have stored an entire movie set back here. That's what makes the Civic hatchback so great. But also, if you are somebody who does live in the city and you have to do on-street parking all the time, this is perfect. You can store everything back here and your car will be able to maneuver its way around on city and suburban roads. Then with the second row seats full, you can have plenty more space where you can store longer items. And honestly, for a small hatchback, for a small compact car, you could probably fit some smaller furniture. You can probably fit boxes if you're moving around. This right here is one of the most versatile hatches I've ever seen in my 5 years of doing reviews. And if that wasn't enough, beneath the floor mat, you are going to receive a spare tire. So if you do encounter a flat on your road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. Also, of course, you are going to have your rear cargo cover, which will keep all your valuable items out of sight. So if you are like me and you have camera gear or anything else of value, you can leave them back here and have that peace of mind knowing that no one will be able to peek in and steal what you have. Then once you're done, just grab onto the handle and close the hatch. So we're now behind the wheel of the Honda Civic hatchback. Let's take this car out for a quick test drive to see how it performs, how it handles, how it drives, how it compares to other small cars in this market. But more importantly, this will be a nice little refresher, because the last time I featured the Civic with the 1.5, it was about 2 years ago. And the last time I featured the Honda Civic in general was about 4 months ago with the 2-liter. Now, I absolutely love the Honda Civic, and it's mostly because of the platform and chassis. What Honda has done to this car is nothing short of phenomenal, because the Civic and other small cars in this market, they're supposed to be economical, they're supposed to be fuel efficient and affordable. But this generation takes things to a whole new level in ways that I don't think the Honda Civic was ever intended to. Because sure, the Civic has always had this history of going 200, 300,000 miles in its lifetime, if not longer. But I don't think we ever looked at the Civic as being refined, as being a car that you could purchase under $30,000 and be absolutely in love with it in ways outside of being economical and practical.
Now, with the EXL, you get a nice balance of a vehicle that feels almost entry-level luxury-like, while also still being attainable, because the price point comes in under 30 grand. And what you have here is dual zone climate control, a half digital, half analog gauge cluster, nice infotainment system, and power moonroof. Also, of course, you have heated front seats, and they're also leather upholstery. You have a vehicle that, in my mind, is one heck of a value package. And because you have the 1.5, now it just feels like a great all-arounder. And even though I think that you can't go wrong whether you go with a 1.5 or 2 liter, the 1.5 isn't gasping for as much air or as power as what we see with the 2 liter. And I think it pairs well with the CVT as well. Also, another thing too, for a small little compact like this, it feels very comfortable, but also upscale for what it is. Interior insulation, when you are driving on the back roads, but also even on the highway, it really isn't that bad, especially for a car in this market. That says quite a bit. But also, the seats provide a lot of cushioning and support, and also the suspension is tuned very softly. But also with the heavy and weighted steering, it feels sporty and dynamic to a certain degree, and that will be felt across the board in the Civic lineup, whether you go with a Sport, SI, or Type R, and that's a testament to this platform and to this generation. But even for the pedestrian models, I mean, we're talking even a Sport, EXL, or Touring, for drivers who are just looking for a great point A to point B vehicle, it's difficult to find anything better elsewhere. And I know I've had people comment on my Civic review last year saying, but what about the Elantra? And I think with the Elantra, yes, you're getting a lot of technology, but I'm not quite sold on the mainstream trims for that model. I'm not a big fan of the IVT, but also I don't think that outside the technology, you're getting a great car, at least when it comes to the driving dynamics. Maybe when it comes to the practicality, the efficiency, you have a vehicle that can go head-to-head with the Civic, but driving dynamics-wise, refinement, and just this platform in general, I think this is still unrivaled. And for the Elantra to be a better option and a better choice over the Civic, you'd have to go with the N-Line or the N. And I just don't know if a lot of regular car shoppers are willing to go in that direction for an enthusiast-focused sedan and car. Also with the Civic, and you do not get this with Volkswagen or Hyundai, is that you also have a hatchback. And that gives you a lot more versatility. Now, some people will start bringing up the Mazda 3. And the Mazda 3, of course, is very entry-level luxury-like for its segments, very similar to what we have here with the Civic. I just think that because the Civic has a better reputation, majority of buyers will go in the Honda direction. And then, of course, crosstown rival Toyota. The Corolla is really aging. It's getting very old. They're going to need to update that very soon. And I just think that for a car in this price bracket, where buyers are beginning to focus on technology, they're beginning to demand refinement, interior quality, that's where they're definitely going to lean towards the Civic. And while I will reiterate a lot of buyer sentiments towards this segment where they want the best value and they also don't want to max out their budget, I still think that the Sport is a great option with the 2 liter. I like the design of it. I like the features that you're getting. But for a couple grand more, the EXL gives you the stronger powertrain, it gives you the higher quality materials, it gives you just a bit more. So if you are somebody that can spend close to 30 grand, I would say go with the EXL if possible, but don't feel bad that you can't max out and go for a Sport, because I think the Sports are really nice as well. And of course, you can opt for a manual for those enthusiasts and purists who want to have the ability to rotate the gears yourself. Now, since we are on the back roads, I'll be able to experience the handling of this little hatchback here. I love the weighted steering, not typical for a Japanese manufacturer. Most vehicles from Japan have a lighter and more vague steering. I'm looking at you, Subaru and Toyota. And we're seeing this across the board for Honda, where even the CR-V has this almost Euro style to it that I can totally appreciate. Now in the corners, nice weight. There is a little bit of feedback here, and it's fun. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on an SI or Type R at some point, because I feel like I'm going to fall in love with this generation even more. But for an EXL, and for someone who is looking at buying a car in this market, what I find most striking, most captivating, and really where I see the value in this hatchback, outside of it being practical and also fuel efficient, is the refinement, is the quality, is the lack of road noise, more importantly. The way in which it feels on the road resembles a mid-size sedan, not necessarily in terms of size, but more along the lines of demeanor. It has this feeling of being a luxury car in terms of the weight. It feels somewhat heavy, and for a lot of compact cars, they feel light. There's not a lot of substance to them. And again, I think it comes back to the chassis, where there's a lot of rigidity to the suspension. It also translates to the steering as well. It's very rare to find a car like this in this market, and I think that's why it has impressed so many buyers so far since it arrived at showrooms, but also a lot of enthusiasts and, of course, journalists who tend to be very critical. And the 1.5 gets up to speed pretty quickly. Obviously, it's not a barnstormer. You're not going to be breaking any speed records, but you can pass slower drivers, lane change very safely. And this is where I think the 1.5 is the better choice, and spending a little extra money for the EXL is going to go a long way. Now, at highway speeds, you do hear a bit more road noise. Obviously, this isn't a luxury vehicle at all, but for a sub $30,000 hatchback, you really can't complain at all. Feels pretty composed on the roadways, and even though you don't have a sports-tuned suspension, this isn't a sports car at all, you do feel pretty planted to the highway. Nice sensation on the roads. So ultimately here, after this quick test drive, I once again really like this car. I love it in sedan form, I love it in hatchback form. I like it more as a hatchback, mostly because of the practicality. The fact that you get HRV-like practicality in a small little car like this definitely goes a long way. But also, I think for people who do live in the city, who do have to park on the street, this is a much better choice, just because it is going to have the maneuverability. You are going to be able to park in tight spots. But also, as a daily commuter, you can tool around town, have that efficiency, but also you're not breaking the bank to get a car like this. That to me means quite a bit, that Honda was willing to give you this much rigidity in an affordable car that a lot of manufacturers would never do. And the thing is too, and I don't typically say this, but it's difficult for me to justify going in the Accord direction if you don't need a car of that size. Now, of course, you are going to get a sedan, a midsize sedan that is going to feel more upscale, going to feel more substantial, there's going to be more substance to it. But for a daily driver, for a car that you're just going to be going to work in, maybe go on some weekend getaways, this to me can do it all. So to quickly wrap up my time with the 2024 Honda Civic Hatchback, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for what I believe is one heck of a value in this segment and from the Honda brand? As much as I love the Civic sedan, it's the hatchback that builds off of this great platform, where you have the practicality. And that's one element that is not necessarily lacking in the Civic, because the Civic is one of the most spacious sedans we see in this market. But the hatchback now gives you the versatility and practicality that you'll receive in a subcompact crossover, so you don't need to upsize necessarily, or if you're somebody who refuses to go in the crossover direction, you have an option here where you have a car that drives with very fun handling characteristics, but also it still gives you that feeling of being planted to the roadways, which you're not going to get with a crossover. But for the Civic, and more specifically this generation, it's the interior layout. It's the features, it's the technology, it's the refinement, it's the platform, and also the powertrain for the EXL that has me coming back for more. To a certain degree, I become infatuated with this generation, mostly because it's the value. For a car under 30 grand, you don't get this level of quality. You don't get a car that feels entry-level luxury-like, especially for an EXL, which isn't a top trim. The fact you have dual zone climate control, a nice infotainment system, you have an interior that wraps around you, and that really translates to the on-road driving experience where it feels like a driver's car, even though it has the 1.5 with 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque and only a CVT. What that tells me here is that if you were to go with the SI or the Civic Type R, you have a car that truly feels driver-focused and enthusiast-focused, and you don't get that in this market. And if you are somebody that is looking for a mainstream trim, whether it's a Sport, an EXL, or Touring, regardless of whether it's the 2-liter or the 1.5, what you're getting here with this generation, with this platform, and this nameplate is a car that is multidimensional in regards to being efficient, affordable, and practical. And that's why I would say, if you are looking at buying your first ever brand new car, you don't want to max out your budget past 30 grand, definitely take a look at the Civic, because I don't think you're going to be regretting your choice purchasing this car regardless of trim or engine. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.